U.S. Hawking drifted silently through Ferdinand XI's upper atmosphere, its advanced sensors probing the jungle world below. Science Officer Lily Singh frowned at the readings scrolling across her holographic display. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Captain," she called out, her voice tight with concern. "You need to see this." Captain Rojas made his way to her station, his movements careful in the ship's minimal gravity. "Talk to me, Singh. What are we looking at?" "Energy signatures, sir. Fresh signatures." She manipulated the display, highlighting several hotspots across the planet's surface. "But they're different. Modified somehow. And, sir," she pulled up another overlay, "greenstone's gone dark. Completely dark." Rojas's weathered face hardened. Greenstone had been home to 50,000 colonists. "The Brefids, the Howlf mining operations." Roja's eyes fought difficulty and aversion while he cross-referenced his devices. "The Howlf's mining operations." "Nothing, sir. No communications, no power signatures, no—" She paused, adjusting her instruments. "Wait. I'm picking up something from the surface. It's a residual data cache, buried in the Colonial Emergency Broadcast Frequency. Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice filled with terror. "This is Administrator Hancock of Greenstone Colony. They came without warning. Fresh forces. They're not like the ones we know. They're killing everyone. The Brefids, the Howlfs, they're not taking prisoners. This isn't like the war. This is extermination. If anyone receives this, please tell command that—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Rojas was already moving. "Send everything to command, now, and get me a secure channel to Malay Marine HQ." 12 hours later, in the steel and glass towers of New Miami, Abdul Bet David stood at the window of his private office, watching ships cruise through the evening sky. The view from the 157th floor of Bet David Tower was spectacular, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd just finished reading the Hawking's report for the third time. His comm unit chimed. "Captain Bet David," a familiar voice said. "I trust you've reviewed the situation?" "Yes, General Morrison." Abdul turned from the window, his reflection showing a man in his early 30s with sharp features and the practiced stance of a warrior. Not what most expected from the heir to one of Earth's largest business empires. "I'm ready to begin mission prep." Good, because you're our best option for this one. Your record with the Malay Marines is unmatched, and your experience with fresh combat tactics during the Titan incursion makes you uniquely qualified. Abdul walked to his desk, where his family's ancestral sword hung in a climate-controlled display case. Next to it sat his Malay Marine energy blade, the technology that had changed the course of the human fleet's war. "What assets will I have?" "You'll be taking 5 companies of Malay Marines, 200 of our best, plus we're attaching 20 Mark 7 Berserker-class mechs for heavy support." Abdul raised an eyebrow. The Berserkers were new walking tanks designed for raw power and devastating close-quarter combat. Interesting combination. The usual doctrine is to send in conventional forces first. This isn't a usual situation. Morrison's voice grew grave. The Hawking's scans suggest these fresh have developed countermeasures to our standard tactics. We need to hit them hard and fast, with our best tech and our best warriors. That's why we're sending you in first. Abdul reached out and touched the display case holding his energy blade. "How soon?" "Dropships are being prepped at Singapore base. Your officers are already assembling. Briefing in 2 hours." The bomb shelter fell back, a firing slug in the face. "I'll be there." Abdul ended the transmission and picked up a framed photo from his desk. Himself as a teenager, standing with his father in front of their first quantum engineering facility. His father had been furious when Abdul chose the Malay Marines over taking control of the family business. "The Bet Davids are builders," his father had said, "not destroyers." But Abdul had seen something his father hadn't. Sometimes you had to fight to protect what others had built. The Fresh War had proved that. And now on Ferdinand XI, it seemed some lessons needed to be taught again. He placed the photo back on his desk and opened his weapons locker. Inside, his combat armor waited, its surface a dark matte gray, designed to blend with both urban and jungle environments. As he began to suit up, his mind was already racing through tactical scenarios, possible enemy configurations, deployment strategies. Whatever these fresh extremists were planning, whatever modifications they'd made to their weapons and defenses, they were about to learn why the Malay Marines were feared across known space, and why Abdul Bet David had never failed a mission. He just hoped they could get there in time to uncover what had really happened to the people of Greenstone, and to make sure it never happened again. The dropship's hull rattled as it punched through Ferdinand XI's turbulent atmosphere. Monsoon season had turned the sky into a maelstrom of wind and rain, but for Abdul Bet David and his Malay Marines, the storm was a blessing, perfect cover for their insertion. Abdul stood in the ship's cramped briefing room, surrounded by the commanders of his 5 companies. The holographic display showed their target zone, a stretch of dense jungle 50 kilometers from the ruins of Greenstone. "The storm will mask our approach," he said, manipulating the hologram. "Echo Company drops first, establishing a perimeter. Alpha through Delta follow with the main force. The Berserkers drop last. We'll need their firepower if things go sideways." Lieutenant Sanders of Echo Company studied the terrain map. "Sir, those are some dense canopy readings. The Breffids built their homes in those trees." "Built," Abdul corrected grimly. "Past tense. Initial scans show no survivors." He zoomed in on a particular section of jungle. "But their structures might give us a tactical advantage. The Fresh are ground dwellers. They'll have focused their sensors low." The ship lurched, and Captain Hancock of the Berserker unit steadied herself against a bulkhead. Unlike the other officers in their sleek Malay marine armor, she wore the bulkier neural interface suit required to pilot the massive mechs. "What's our role if we make contact during the drop?" Abdul's response was interrupted by the ship's AI. "Captains, energy spike detected. Fresh patrol, bearing 270. Current course will cross our path in 3 minutes. Time to test our new toys," Abdul said, bringing up a new display. "Activating fresh cloaking tech. Now." Abdul shook his head. "Okay." The stolen Fresh technology hummed to life, bending light and energy around their ships. It was a calculated risk. They hadn't had time to fully test the captured systems. But as the patrol passed beneath them, their sensors remained quiet. "Down we go," Abdul whispered. The deployment was textbook. Echo Company's dropships dispersed their troops across the canopy in near-perfect silence, their energy swords humming softly in the rain. Abdul landed with Alpha Company, his boots settling into the moss-covered branch of what had once been a Breffid home. The sight that greeted them was haunting. The graceful organic architecture of the Breffids still curved through the trees, but the structures were empty, many bearing scorch marks from fresh weapons. Personal belongings lay scattered and rotting in the rain. "Squad leaders report," Abdul sub-vocalized through his Neuralink. The responses came in quick succession. "All units deployed, no contact, no survivors." "Mercers are grounded and operational," Captain Hancock added. "Ready to move on your order." Abdul activated his armor's advanced sensors, scanning the jungle floor below. The rain complicated the readings, but he could make out signs of recent activity. Heavy equipment had been moved through here, leaving traces even the monsoon couldn't completely wash away. Echo Company, push east. Delta and Charlie, establish a defensive line. Beta, with me. Alpha, coordinate with the Berserkers. I want overlapping fields of fire if we need them. As his troops moved into position, Abdul descended to the jungle floor, accompanied by his personal squad. The ground was a mess of mud and fallen vegetation. But something caught his eye, a glint of metal half buried in the muck. "Hush, my lord." He brushed away the debris, revealing a Howlf mining tool. Beside it lay a small holographic projector, miraculously still functional. Abdul activated it. A flickering image appeared. A breathed elder, her bioluminescent pattern showing signs of extreme distress. "They came in the night," the recording began. "The Fress, they were different, changed. Our peace meant nothing to them. The humans tried to help us, but..." The image stuttered. "If anyone finds this, beware. These are not the Fress we made peace with. These are monsters, twisted by hate." The recording died. Sigh. Abdul found her standing at the edge of a massive depression in the jungle floor. His helmet's sensors penetrated the rain and darkness, revealing the horror below. A mass grave. Bodies of humans, breathids and howls, piled together. Men, women, children. The Fress had made no distinction. And approaching quickly, as Victoria knelt to reach into the grave, she fell to the cold floor. "Thermoscans show at least 3 more sites like this," Katrine reported, her voice tight with anger. Abdul knelt, touching the muddy ground. His family had helped rebuild worlds after the Fress War, had worked alongside peaceful Fress to create new technologies, new opportunities. This was something else. A cancer that needed to be cut out. "Captain," Hancock's voice crackled through his comm. "Berserker units are picking up movement. Multiple signatures heading north. They match the modified Fress energy patterns." Abdul stood, his energy sword humming to life with a sound like distant thunder. "All units, battle positions. Hancock, move your Berserkers up, but hold at the tree line." He took one last look at the massed grave. "We're about to find out exactly what we're dealing with." The rain continued to fall, but Abdul barely noticed it now. His focus had narrowed to a laser point. Somewhere in this jungle, the monsters who had done this were hiding, planning, perhaps even now preparing to spread their hatred to other worlds. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had forgotten why humanity had won the war, not just through technology or tactics, but through sheer unstoppable determination. Continuing on, "All units," he transmitted, "weapons free. Let's remind them." The first Fress patrol emerged from the rain like ghosts. Their shells were different from what Abdul remembered, darker, with a strange iridescent quality that seemed to ripple in the downpour. But it was their size that gave him pause. These Fress were larger, their normally rounded forms bulging with what appeared to be artificial muscle masses grafted onto their shells. "Cooled," Abdul subvocalized to his troops. Echo Company's snipers had their positions in the canopy, while the Berserkers waited in the shadows of the massive jungle trees, their massive frames surprisingly well concealed by Hancock's expert positioning. The fresh patrol moved with precision that spoke of extensive modifications. Their movements were faster, more fluid than their species' normally awkward gait. Abdul counted 12 in the visible group, but his sensors suggested more hiding in the underbrush. Multiple signatures detecting elevated power readings, Lieutenant Khatri reported quietly. "They're running some kind of new shielding tech." Abdul had expected this. After the war, some of their defensive technologies had been leaked, but something about these shields was different. They had a familiar shimmer to them. "Those are human shield designs," he realized. reversed engineered, and modified. The patrol was nearly in the kill zone when one of them stopped, its sensor arrays extending. For a moment, Abdul thought they'd been detected. Then the Fress did something none of them expected. It spoke, in perfect, unaccented human standard. "We know you're here, humans." The voice was flat, mechanical. "Your cloaking technology? We created it. Did you think we wouldn't recognize our own signatures?" Abdul felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. The Fress weren't supposed to be capable of human speech. Their vocal structures were too different. What had these extremists done to themselves? He turned the video over in his mind. Before he could process this, the jungle erupted in plasma fire. The Fress had detected them after all, and their weapons were devastating. Trees exploded into steam and splinters as superheated bolts of energy tore through the canopy. "Contact!" Abdul roared, his energy sword blazing to life. "All units, engage!" Echo Company's snipers opened up from above, their precision fire targeting the Fress patrol. But something was wrong. The energy bolts that should have torn through Fress shells seemed to dissipate on impact, their power scattered by the iridescent armor. "Oh, energy-dispersing tech," Abdul realized. "Hancock, we need the Berserkers, now." The ground shook as 20 Berserker-class mechs burst from their hiding spots, their massive forms dwarfing both humans and Fress. Captain Hancock led the charge, her mech's power claw ripping through the jungle floor as she rushed the nearest Fress soldier. The extremist turned to face her, raising what looked like a standard Fress plasma rifle. But the weapon's discharge was anything but standard. A beam of corrosive energy struck Hancock's mech, eating through its frontal armor with frightening speed. "New weapons!" Hancock shouted, her mech staggering. "They've modified their plasma tech." Abdul was already moving, his energy sword describing deadly arcs through the rain. 2 Fress soldiers turned to engage him, their shells rippling with unnatural muscle movements. They were fast, faster than any Fress he'd encountered. But Abdul hadn't earned his reputation by being slow. His first strike was a feint, drawing their defensive fire. The second was a modified kendo technique his grandfather had taught him, adapted for the energy blade's unique properties. It connected with the first Fress's shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Abdul triggered his blade's pulse modifier, a rapid oscillation of the energy field that he'd developed during the Titan incursion. The Fress shield shattered, and the blade continued through its reinforced shell, cutting the creature in half. "Pulse strike effective," he transmitted to all units. "Modulate your blade frequencies." The battle devolved into chaos. Melee Marines dueled with enhanced Fress warriors, while Berserker Mechs provided heavy support, their massive weapons thundering in the storm. The extremists fought with a savagery that bordered on madness, several detonating some kind of internal explosive when cornered. Abdul cut his way through 3 more Fress, each strike revealing new aspects of their modifications. They'd enhanced everything: reaction speed, armor, weapons. But there was something desperate about their improvements, as if they'd sacrificed safety for raw combat potential. If they ran ahead— "Sir?" Katrine's voice cut through the battle noise. "They're falling back to some kind of bunker entrance, but something's wrong with their energy signatures." Abdul dispatched another Fress with a pulse strike to its central mass. "Define wrong," Fress declared. "They're spiking, sir, all of them, like they're about to..." The explosion caught them all off guard. The remaining Fress detonated simultaneously, the combined force of their enhanced power cores creating a shock wave that knocked even the Berserker Mechs off their feet. When the smoke cleared, the bunker entrance had collapsed, sealing their quarry inside. "Everyone, we need to stop." "Casualties," Abdul demanded, picking himself up from where the blast had thrown him. The reports came in. 3 Marines dead, 12 wounded, 2 Berserker Mechs damaged but repairable. But they'd killed or captured 27 of the modified Fress, and more importantly, they'd proven their weapons could still hurt them. Hancock, get your techs to analyze that corroding plasma weapon. Katri, I want samples from the Fress bodies before they decompose. Everyone else, secure the perimeter. They'll have sent a warning to their main base by now. As his troops moved to comply, Abdul examined one of the fallen Fress. Its shell had been split open by the force of its own detonation, revealing a nightmarish mix of organic tissue and cybernetic enhancement. These weren't just extremists. They were fanatics who had literally rebuilt themselves for the sole purpose of killing humans. Without doubt. Sir, one of his sergeants approached. We found something in the bunker entrance, some kind of data core. Abdul took the device, noting its familiar design. Human tech, probably stolen from Greenstone. He connected it to his suit's systems, and his blood ran cold as he read the contents. Get me a secure link to command, he ordered. Now. The extremists had been busy. This wasn't just a hidden base. It was a blueprint for genocide, and Ferdinand 11 was only the beginning. The mountain loomed before them, its snow-capped peak lost in Ferdinand 11's perpetual storm clouds. Abdul stood at the edge of the jungle clearing, studying the seemingly innocent rock face through his tactical display. The stolen data core had led them here to what appeared to be the main Fress facility. Thermal imaging is useless, Lieutenant Katri reported, her sensors probing the mountain. They're using some kind of metamaterial shielding, but the ground-penetrating radar... She paused, adjusting her equipment. Sir, this place is massive. The tunnels go down at least 2 kilometers. Abdul nodded grimly. After 3 days of fighting their way through Fress patrols and automated defenses, they'd finally found their target. The cost had been high. 5 more Marines dead, 3 Berserker Mechs too damaged to continue. But what they'd learned along the way had made retreat impossible. Show me the scan results, he ordered. The holographic display materialized between them, showing layer upon layer of underground facilities, manufacturing plants, weapons testing ranges, and something else. Something that made his blood run cold. Those, Captain Hancock started, her Berserker Mech stepping forward for a better look. But those are the mechs. Cloning chambers, Hutri confirmed. Hundreds of them. They're building an army. Abdul's hand tightened on his energy sword's hilt. The data core had hinted at this, but seeing the scale of it. What's that large chamber at the bottom? Hutri enhanced the image. Some kind of research facility. The power readings are off the charts. And sir, the radiation signature matches samples we found in Greenstone. Whatever killed those colonists was developed there. Movement, one of the Echo Company snipers called out. Main entrance, some kind of transport vehicle. They watched as a massive door slid open in the rock face, disgorging what looked like a heavily modified Fress cargo hauler. Its sides bulged with strange growths, biological components grafted onto mechanical systems. Hancock, analysis? The Berserker captain's mech whirred as its sensors focused on the vehicle. Sir, those aren't just modifications. They're growing their vehicles, combining fresh biotech with salvaged human machinery. Abdul had seen enough. All units, battle positions. Hancock, your Berserkers take point. That door's going to be heavily defended. Echo Company, I want your best shots in elevated positions. Everyone else, prepare for close quarters combat. We're going in. The assault began with precise strikes from the Berserker units, their massive weapons targeting key points around the entrance. The Fress had expected an attack, but not the sheer overwhelming force of 17 war mechs hitting simultaneously. The door crumpled under the barrage, revealing a wide tunnel leading into the mountain. And then, the defenders emerged. Powell and Panya. Powell and Panya began to shout and repeat Chinese words, along with some of the words Powell had used with his client. "By all that's holy," someone whispered over the comm, and fresh soldiers that poured from the entrance were like nothing they'd encountered before. Their shells had been completely rebuilt, transformed into nightmarish combinations of organic and mechanical components. Some moved on multiple mechanical legs, while others floated on gravitic generators, clearly stolen from human tech. But worst of all were their weapons, biological plasma projectors grown directly from their modified bodies, pulsing with sickly light. "Spread out!" Abdul ordered as the first volley of fire melted two Marines where they stood. "Hancock, push forward! Don't let them bottleneck us!" The Berserkers charged, their massive forms providing cover for the Marines. Abdul led his squad through the chaos, his energy sword pulsing with modified frequencies as they encountered each new type of fresh defense. They fought their way inside, every meter gained paid for in blood and burned metal. The Fress had transformed the tunnel into a killing ground, with automated turrets emerging from biological growth on the walls and ceiling. "Sir?" Katri's voice cut through the battle noise. "I'm detecting massive power fluctuations from the lower levels. They're activating something." Abdul cut down another modified Fress, its death scream a horrible mixture of organic and synthetic sound. "Can you identify?" "No, but these readings, they're similar to the energy signature we detected during the Greenstone massacre, but magnified 1,000 times." They'd reached a massive chamber filled with manufacturing equipment, human and Fress technology merged into grotesque new forms. Pods lined the walls, each containing a growing Fress clone, their shells already sprouting mechanical modifications. "They're not just building an army," Abdul realized, scanning the facility's data network with his suit's systems. "They're creating a new species, combining everything they learned from the war with stolen human tech, making themselves into living weapons." A blast door at the far end of the chamber began to open. Through it, they could see the central research facility and the horror it contained. Suspended in a massive tank was what appeared to be a Fress elder, but one so heavily modified it barely resembled its original species. Its shell had been split open, replaced with transparent sections showing pulsing organs and mechanical components. Tubes and cables connected it to banks of equipment that lined the walls. And surrounding the tank were hundreds of stasis pods, each containing a fully modified Fress warrior ready for activation. "A Fress warrior. This is Commander Abdul Bet-Debid to all units," he transmitted, his voice hard. "We found their production facility. And their weapon. Hancock, get your berserkers in position. We're shutting this down. Permanently." As his troops moved to secure the chamber, Abdul studied the grotesque being in the tank. Its eyes opened, natural eyes replaced with electronic sensors, and focused on him. When it spoke, the voice was a horrible mixture of Fress clicking and human speech. "You are too late, human. The evolution of our species cannot be stopped. What you see here is just one facility of many. The new Fress Empire is rising, and this time we will not be defeated by primitive weapons and human determination." Abdul raised his energy sword. "We'll see about that." The chamber's light suddenly shifted to a pulsing red, and alarms began to blare throughout the facility. The stasis pods started to activate, one by one. The battle for Ferdinand 11 was about to enter its final phase, and Abdul had a feeling it would make the original Fress War look like a border skirmish. The stasis pods burst open in synchronized sequence, spilling their enhanced occupants onto the chamber floor. Each modified Fress warrior was a unique nightmare, some with multiple limbs grafted onto their shells, others with weapons grown directly from their bodies, all of them ready for battle. "Hancock, collapse the entrance," Abdul shouted over the comm. "Trap them in here with us." The soldier on the deck said something in his language. The Berserker Mechs opened fire on the chamber's massive doorway, their weapons turning the reinforced frame into molten slag. It wouldn't hold the Fress forever, but it would prevent them from being surrounded. "All units, form up," Abdul ordered, his energy sword humming with deadly purpose. "Defensive positions. Don't let them reach the tunnels." The chamber erupted into chaos. The enhanced Fress moved with unnatural speed, their modified bodies allowing them to climb walls and skitter across ceilings. The Marines found themselves fighting in 3 dimensions, their energy swords flashing in the red emergency lighting. "Watch the bioweapons," Lieutenant Katri warned as a Fress warrior's chest cavity split open, revealing a nest of writhing tentacles that sprayed corrosive fluid. "They're using their own bodies as delivery systems." Abdul ducked under a spray of acid, his armor's shields barely holding. The Fress had turned themselves into living weapons, each one a different horror. Some exploded when killed, forcing the Marines to adapt their tactics on the fly. "Hancock, status on the Berserkers." "Holding the line, sir." Hancock's voice was strained as her mech grappled with a particularly large Fress, its shell covered in pulsing mechanical muscles. "But these things, they're learning our patterns, adapting mid-fight." She was right. The enhanced Fress were displaying tactical awareness far beyond their normal capabilities. They coordinated their attacks, used complex flanking maneuvers, and, most worryingly, seemed to be analyzing and countering the Marines' techniques in real time. "The Elder," Abdul realized, glancing at the massive tank where the modified Fress leader floated. "It's controlling them somehow, directing their actions." As if in response, the Elder's electronic eyes focused on Abdul. Its voice echoed through the chamber's speakers. "We have evolved beyond your comprehension, human. Each warrior is connected to a shared neural network. They learn as one, fight as one. Your individualistic tactics cannot prevail against our unity." Sin brackets, high collect. A massive explosion rocked the chamber as one of the Berserkers went down, its pilot screaming as enhanced Fress warriors tore through the cockpit. The remaining mechs formed a tighter circle, their weapons creating a kill zone around them. "Sir," Katri called out, "power readings are spiking in the lower levels. They are activating something big." Abdul cut through 2 more Fress warriors, their enhanced bodies falling in pieces. "Can you identify?" Abdul asked. Sir, it's some kind of massive plasma reactor. The energy signature matches what we found in Greenstone, but the scale..." She paused, checking readings. "If this goes critical, it'll take out everything within 100 kilometers." The Elder's voice came again, tinged with what sounded like satisfaction. "Did you think we would allow you to stop our evolution? If we cannot complete our transformation here, we will ensure that nothing survives. Our other facilities will continue our work." "Like hell," Abdul snarled. "Hancock, get your Berserkers to the reactor level. We need to shut it down." He scratched his own chest. "Silence, everybody, just quiet." "Sir, we've got bigger problems," one of the Echo Company snipers called out. "More pods are activating in the side chambers. Hundreds of them," Sir Tronic said. Abdul surveyed the battlefield. They'd lost nearly a quarter of their forces already. The Berserkers were holding, but their ammunition was running low, forcing them to engage in close combat with their power claws. And now reinforcements were coming. New plan, he decided. "Hancock, take half your Berserkers and get to that reactor. Catrice, you're with them. Find a way to shut it down or contain the blast. Everyone else, we're pushing toward that tank. We need to take out the Elder." The Marines regrouped, forming a wedge with Abdul at the point. The Berserkers provided covering fire as more enhanced Fress poured into the chamber, their modified bodies creating a horrific tide of flesh and metal. "Remember your training," Abdul shouted as they advanced. "Pulse strikes on their neural clusters. Don't let them box you in." The fighting became desperate. close-quartered combat. Energy swords clashed with biological weapons and mechanical claws. The air filled with acid spray and plasma discharge. Marines fell, but they took dozens of enhanced fresh with them. She was becoming fit. Slowly, methodically, they fought their way toward the Elder's tank. The massive container loomed above them, its occupant watching with those unnatural electronic eyes as its children died by the score. "You cannot stop what we have become," the Elder proclaimed. "Even if you destroy this facility, our work will continue. The weak Fress who embraced peace with humans will be replaced. We will rise again, stronger than ever." Abdul reached the base of the tank, his armor scarred and smoking, his energy sword's power cell nearly depleted. Around him the battle raged on, but he focused on the monstrosity before him, the architect of this atrocity. "Sir," Katrine's voice crackled through his comm. "Reactor's going critical, we can't shut it down." The Elder's electronic eyes gleamed with triumph. "Choose, human. Stop me or save your soldiers. You cannot do both." Abdul Bet David, heir to a business empire and veteran of countless battles, looked up at the twisted being that had ordered the massacre of thousands, and he smiled. "Watch me." The chamber shook with another explosion as Abdul sized up the massive tank before him. The Elder's mutated form floated in its nutrient bath, cables and tubes writhing like tentacles around its modified shell. Those electronic eyes tracked his every move. "Reactor status?" Abdul barked into his comm. 2 minutes to critical." Katrine's voice was strained. "The containment fields are failing." "Sir, we need a solution, fast." The Elder's voice reverberated through the chamber. "Your primitive human mind cannot grasp the elegance of your destruction. The reactor's detonation will seed this entire region with radiation specifically engineered to target human DNA. Anyone who tries to resettle Ferdinand 11 will die. A fitting memorial to human arrogance." Abdul's mind raced. The reactor would kill everyone within 100 kilometers. But if he diverted forces to stop it, the Elder would activate its backup protocols, potentially awakening fresh facilities across the galaxy. An impossible choice. "Wes. Hancock," he subvocalized on a private channel. "Your berserkers carry antimatter demolition charges, correct?" "Yes, sir," she replied, her mech crushing an enhanced fresh warrior. "Standard loadout for deep facility clearance." "Why?" "If we placed all 17 Berserker's charges around the reactor core and synchronized the detonation frequencies." A pause. The sound of her Berserker's power claw tearing through enemy forces. "It could work. The synchronized quantum fields would contain and redirect the reactor's energy. But sir, we'd need at least 30 seconds to set the charges and sync them." "Can you do it?" "Yes, but we'll need cover. A lot of it." Abdul nodded grimly. "You'll have it. Get your people moving. I'll handle the Elder." He switched back to the main channel. "All Marines, defensive formation around the Berserkers. Give them whatever time they need." The Elder watched this exchange with its inhuman eyes, cables writhing. "Your troops cannot stop what is coming. You will all die here." "Maybe," Abdul agreed, raising his energy sword. "But not today." He struck the tank with a precise pulse strike, his blade's frequency modulated to match the transparent material's resonance. A crack appeared. Then another. The Elder's electronic eyes widened as it realized what was happening. His eyes closed as his body grew dizzy from the burning metal, locked to the pulse strike. "You fall!" it screeched, its voice losing its mechanical calm. "I control every enhanced warrior in this facility. Kill him. Kill them all." The remaining fresh forces surged forward, but the Marines held their ground, their energy swords creating a wall of light in the dim chamber. Behind them, the Berserkers moved into position around the reactor core, their massive forms working with practiced efficiency to place and calibrate their charges. Abdul struck the tank again and again, each blow precisely calculated, each crack spreading in a controlled pattern. The Elder thrashed in its nutrient bath, its cables flailing wildly. "You cannot stop evolution," it shrieked. "We are the future. We are what the Fresh must become." "No," Abdul said, delivering the final strike. "You're a cautionary tale." The tank shattered. The Elder tumbled out in a cascade of fluid and thrashing cables, its modified body spasming as it tried to adapt to the air. Around the chamber, the enhanced Fresh warriors stumbled, their neural link to their leader suddenly severed. "Charges set," Hancock reported. "Synchronization in progress." The Elder dragged itself across the floor toward Abdul, its mechanical components sparking. "Others will continue our work," it gurgled through failing vocal systems. "The weak Fresh will be purged. Humanity will be exterminated. You have failed." Abdul looked down at the pitiful creature, a being so consumed by hate that it had destroyed itself trying to destroy others. "No," he said quietly. "You failed. You forgot the most important lesson of the war." "And what?" The Elder's electronic eyes flickered. "What lesson was that?" Abdul's energy sword hummed to life one final time. "Humanity doesn't break. We adapt. We overcome. And we never fight alone." The sword fell. The Elder's modified head rolled across the floor, its electronic eyes finally going dark. Throughout the chamber, the enhanced Fresh warriors collapsed, their neural links severed permanently. A half-hour later, the first wake of dawn broke, and the day ended with crisp, clear skies. The Elder "Charges synchronized," Hancock's voice rang out. "Quantum field harmonics matched. Everyone clear the facility. We've got 5 minutes before remote detonation," Hancock said, coming away from the receding team. "L units, fall back," Abdul commanded. "Tactical retreat to minimum safe distance. Move!" "We have countered the threat," Ruby replied. The Marines executed a fighting retreat, covering each other as they withdrew from the facility. The Berserkers provided rear guard, their massive forms ensuring no enhanced Fresh could follow. As they emerged from the mountain facility into the jungle rain, Abdul did one final head count. They'd lost good people today, but they'd survived. More importantly, they'd won. 3 minutes to detonation, Hancock reported as her Berserker unit took up defensive positions around the evacuation zone. "Sir, I'm picking up some strange readings from the quantum field harmonics. The charges aren't just going to contain the explosion, they're generating some kind of feedback through the Fresh neural network." Abdul's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "Can you modify the detonation frequency, use their own network against them?" "Already on it, sir. Uploading targeting data now." The remaining Marines and Berserkers moved to safe distance, their sensors trained on the mountain facility. As the final seconds counted down, Abdul thought of his father's words. "The Bet Davids are builders, not destroyers." "Sometimes, Father," he whispered, "you have to destroy something to build a better future." The mountain erupted in a contained explosion of antimatter energy and plasma, the synchronized charges perfectly focusing and redirecting the reactor's power. When the light faded, the facility was gone, and with it, the location of every hidden Fresh base connected to their neural network. They had won, and not a single Marine or Berserker had to die to do it. "Good work, everyone," Abdul transmitted on the general channel. "Let's go home." The mountain collapsed in on itself with surprising grace. The synchronized antimatter detonations had done their work perfectly, containing the reactor's explosion while channeling its energy inward. Where there had once been a peak, reaching into Ferdinand 11's storm clouds, now there was only a perfect, smooth-sided crater. Lieutenant Khatri's sensors were already analyzing the debris field. "No radiation leakage," she reported. "The containment fields held. The surrounding jungle is completely unaffected." Abdul nodded, watching as the last of the dust settled. Around him, Marines and Berserker units secured the perimeter, though there was little need. No enhanced FRES had survived the blast. "What about the neural network feedback? Sir, you're going to want to see this." Khatri projected a holographic display from her armor's systems. The antimatter detonation created a cascading effect through their network. "We're detecting signal echoes from 17 different locations across known space. Hidden facilities," Abdul realized. "Each one probably just like this one." "Yes, sir, and now we have their exact coordinates." The rain was finally clearing, Ferdinand 11's binary suns breaking through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Abdul watched the play of light across his armor, thinking of everything they'd discovered in that facility. The enhanced FRES, the bioweapons, the Elders' mad plans for genocide. It could have been the start of another war. Instead, thanks to quick thinking and antimatter charges, they'd ended the threat before it truly began. "Captain Hancock," he called over the comm, "status of your berserkers." "All units operational, sir," she replied, "though we'll need some maintenance after that fight. Those enhanced FRES did a number on our armor plating." "They did a number on all of us," Abdul agreed, looking at his assembled forces. They'd lost good people in the battle, 27 Marines and countless wounds among the survivors, but they'd prevented something far worse. A week later, Abdul stood in the ruins of Greenstone, watching as the first Reconstruction crews arrived. The Joint Human FRES Task Force had already secured 3 of the hidden facilities exposed by the neural network feedback, finding each one in the early stages of creating their own enhanced warriors. "The peaceful FRES are taking it hard," Khatri said, joining him at the observation post. "Finding out some of their people had gone to such extremes." "What?" "Attempted suicide," Khatri said. "They're helping us clean it up," Abdul replied. "That's what matters, and they're providing valuable intel on potential extremist sympathizers." Above them, construction drones were already beginning to clear debris, preparing the ground for new buildings. But this time, Greenstone wouldn't be just a human colony. The plans called for a joint settlement: humans, peaceful FRES, Breffids, and Howls, all living and working together. "Your father called?" Khatri mentioned casually. "Something about the Bet David Corporation being interested in funding the Reconstruction. In the first place, there are several studies conducted on the Reconstruction." Abdul smiled. Did he now? He said, and I quote, "Maybe my son understood what it means to be a builder better than I thought." The sun caught the edges of Abdul's energy sword as he adjusted it on his hip. The weapon had served him well in the battle, but now it would serve an equally important purpose: reminding everyone what happened when hatred and fear were allowed to overcome reason and cooperation. "Sir," Hancock's voice came over the comm, "the Council is ready for your briefing. They want to know about establishing a permanent melee Marine base here." "Sir." "Makes sense," Abdul said. Ferdinand 11 is a natural checkpoint between 3 major trade routes. Keeping the peace here means keeping the peace across the sector. He paused, looking at the construction already underway. "Tell them I have some ideas about integrating it with the new settlement. Something that shows we're here as guardians, not conquerors." A gentle breeze blew through the ruined city, carrying with it the scent of jungle flowers and new growth. Nature, at least, wasn't waiting for permits and plans to begin rebuilding. "Lieutenant Khatri," Captain Hancock. Abdul said, turning to head to the briefing. "Let's go show them how to build something that'll last." "Agreed," Katoma answered, and started to head back to his desk. The lieutenant opened a drawer and pulled out the military-size key he had purchased the previous day. As they walked through the rebuilding city, Abdul thought about the Elder's final words about evolution and strength. The twisted creature had been right about one thing: evolution was inevitable. But true strength didn't come from cybernetic enhancements or biological weapons. It came from learning to grow together, from building rather than destroying, from choosing cooperation over conflict. The Malay Marines would remain vigilant, ready to face whatever threats might emerge from the darkness between stars. But their greatest victory on Ferdinand XI hadn't come from their weapons or their tactics. It had come from remembering that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to prevent it from happening in the first place. And if you had to fight, you made damn sure that what you built afterward was worth the cost. The binary suns continued their eternal dance overhead, shining down on a world that was scarred but healing, damaged but not destroyed. In the end, that was humanity's greatest strength. Not the ability to survive, but the wisdom to learn and grow from every challenge. To build something better from the ashes of conflict. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. Feel free to comment and share this story too. It helps the channel grow. Let's make this channel huge together.